Unstable tariff policies, a lack of consistency. One of the biggest sources of instability in the U.S. economy is the unpredictable nature of Trump's tariff policies. Over the past few years, he has repeatedly changed his stance on tariffs, particularly with major trade partners like China, Canada, and Mexico. One day, he announces high tariffs to protect American industries. The next day, he delays or reverses them. This inconsistency has caused widespread uncertainty in the business community. Companies require stability to plan production, investments, and hiring, but when policies shift unpredictably, they struggle to make informed decisions. This doesn't just weaken business confidence. It also drives investors away from U.S. markets, pushing them toward countries with more stable trade policies. Trump withdraws tariffs on Canada and Mexico, a strategic retreat. In recent years, Trump imposed tariffs on numerous imports from Canada and Mexico, only to later withdraw them. Officially, the reasoning was to help neighboring economies, but in reality, the move was likely driven by economic fallout within the U.S. American businesses, especially in manufacturing and the automotive industry, faced rising production costs due to increased tariffs. Supply chains became strained and consumer goods became more expensive. Faced with backlash from businesses and economic analysts, Trump had little choice but to pull back on these tariffs. This wasn't a gesture of goodwill. It was a forced retreat under economic pressure. This decision also exposed the lack of strategic planning in Trump's trade policy. Imposing tariffs, then suddenly removing them, damaged America's credibility in trade negotiations. If the U.S. cannot maintain a clear trade policy, it risks losing leverage in global markets. Without a long-term strategy, American businesses will continue to suffer from unpredictable economic shifts. Inflation rising due to Trump's economic policies? One of the most pressing economic issues today is inflation. During Trump's administration, a series of fiscal and trade policies contributed to long-term economic challenges, most notably the rapid expansion of national debt. Data shows that under Trump, the U.S. national debt increased by $8 trillion, a staggering figure that has directly influenced inflation. Additionally, the implementation of high tariffs drove up the cost of imported goods, further increasing inflationary pressure. When prices rise, consumer spending drops, placing additional strain on the economy. While inflation has shown signs of easing under the current administration, the long-term effects of previous economic decisions continue to linger. Financial analysts warn that without proper control measures, inflation could remain a major threat. Managing government spending and adjusting monetary policy will be crucial in stabilizing the economy and protecting American households from further financial strain. Donald Trump's latest speech before Congress turned into a full-blown political spectacle, leaving the chamber divided and tense. It wasn't just about policy, it was about performance. With bold claims, aggressive attacks, and headline-grabbing promises, Trump once again proved that in today's America, politics isn't just governance, it's entertainment. So what exactly made this speech so explosive? Let's break it down. From the very beginning, Trump wasted no time in attacking Democrats, accusing them of refusing to applaud his so-called achievements. In a moment of pure Trump-style theatrics, he claimed, "Even if I cured cancer or saved the world, they still wouldn't clap." The Republican side erupted in applause, while Democrats sat stone-faced. But here's the reality. Many of Trump's achievements remain unverified, or worse, broken promises. This wasn't a speech about real solutions. It was a performance designed to rally his base and create viral moments. A major focus of Trump's speech was the economy. He blamed Biden for high inflation and rising costs, claiming that essential goods, like eggs, are at record-high prices due to Democratic policies. But here's the truth. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, inflation has actually dropped from its 9.1% peak in 2022 to around 3.1% today. Some prices remain high, but that's due to global supply chain issues, the Ukraine war, and corporate pricing strategies, not just Biden's policies. By twisting the facts, Trump painted a doomsday scenario that isn't entirely accurate, but that didn't stop his supporters from cheering. Perhaps the most shocking moment came when Trump announced that Elon Musk would lead a new government agency called the Department of Efficiency. The reaction? Republicans gave Musk a standing ovation. Democrats? Total silence. But what does this mean? If Musk applies the same strategy to the U.S. government as he did at Twitter, now X, where he fired 80% of employees, we could see massive job cuts in federal agencies. For Trump supporters, this is a win. Less government, more efficiency. For government workers, a nightmare scenario. Trump also promised to eliminate DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies in government, proudly stating, "America will no longer be woke." What does this mean? DEI programs were designed to promote diversity in hiring and education. Without them, millions of employees and students could lose access to opportunities they previously had. For corporations, this creates a dilemma. Most major companies support DEI as a business advantage. Trump's hardline stance could alienate business leaders and even hurt America's global reputation. To top it all off, Trump declared himself the most successful president of all time, ranking himself above George Washington. The facts say otherwise. Trump faced 2 impeachments. His administration ended in chaos with the January 6th insurrection. His handling of COVID-19 led to one of the worst economic downturns in history. His trade war with China hurt American farmers and businesses, leading to billions in bailout payments. He failed to repeal and replace Obamacare despite years of promises and a Republican-controlled Congress. His administration separated thousands of migrant children from their families, sparking international outrage. His post-election Stop the Steal campaign led to multiple criminal indictments and legal battles. Even after leaving office, Trump remains the first former president to face felony charges, with 91 counts across multiple cases. Sure, Trump had some early economic wins, but calling himself greater than Washington? That's a bold statement, even for Trump. Trump's speech wasn't about policy. It wasn't even about governing. It was about rallying his base. It was about creating viral moments. It was about entertainment, not leadership. For his supporters, it was a historic moment. For his critics, it was a disaster. For America, it was another chapter in the ongoing Trump reality show, where politics and performance are now the same thing.
This country has gotten bloated and fat and disgusting and incompetently run.
Wow. Trump's opening remarks were not only surprising, but also raised concerns about his focus as president. Immediately after, Trump fixated on egg prices, claiming they had skyrocketed since he left office. However, according to data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, the average price of a dozen grade A eggs in major U.S. cities was $4.95 in January 2025, up from $2.04 in August 2023. While the price increase is significant, it does not align with Trump's exaggerated portrayal. This raises the question, is Trump genuinely concerned about the economy, or is he merely attempting to blame the previous administration while overlooking the fact that he is now the one in charge? One of the key moments in the meeting occurred when Trump was asked about consumer confidence, an essential metric reflecting economic conditions. Trump claimed that after the election, Americans' confidence had skyrocketed to the highest level in history. However, according to the Conference Board, the Consumer Confidence Index dropped by 7.0 points in February 2025, reaching 98.3, the largest decline since August 2021. Economists attributed this drop to rising inflation fears and looming recession concerns. Shortly after, another unexpected turn occurred when Trump abruptly handed control of the meeting over to Elon Musk. Furthermore, Musk disclosed that they had accidentally cut funding for Ebola prevention, a mistake amounting to $3.2 billion. He assured the public that they had swiftly corrected the issue after facing public backlash. Meanwhile, Trump and Musk boasted about cutting $55 billion in government spending. However, according to NPR, the actual amount cut was only $2 billion. Even more concerning, Trump's new budget plan is expected to add $19 trillion to the national debt over the next decade, while granting $4.5 trillion in tax cuts to the ultra-wealthy. Trump did not stop there. He went on to shock the nation with an unprecedented proposal, selling golden immigration cards for $5 million per person. According to Trump, if the U.S. sells 10 million of these cards, it could generate $50 trillion in revenue, supposedly paying off the national debt. However, economic experts immediately debunked this figure. According to data from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, the U.S. grants an average of 1.1 million green cards per year. To reach Trump's target of 10 million, the U.S. would need to increase immigration by nearly 900%, an impossible feat. Additionally, this plan would allow billionaires, including Russian oligarchs, to buy U.S. citizenship, creating major risks for money laundering and financial manipulation on a global scale. One of the most controversial moments of the meeting came when Trump was asked whether his administration would cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. At first, Trump firmly declared no. Previously, Trump and Musk had claimed that 150-year-olds were receiving benefits. Now, the number had mysteriously increased to 200. But according to a report from the Social Security Administration, SSA, there is no record of any Social Security recipients over the age of 115. Additionally, fraud accounts for less than 0.01% of total Social Security spending. More importantly, critics warn that whenever politicians push for fraud reduction in social programs, their real agenda is cutting essential benefits, a strategy Trump's administration previously attempted in his first term. Does this signal that Trump is once again preparing to slash key social safety net programs? Donald Trump is currently facing a political and economic storm like never before. Amid this massive crisis, he is not only grappling with growing dissatisfaction from his own supporters, but also dealing with political failures both internationally and within the U.S. economy. What are the reasons behind these challenges, and can Trump overcome them? The growing dissatisfaction among voters is one of the biggest challenges Trump is facing. Recent surveys show that the public no longer believes in his promises to make America great again. His supporters now feel forgotten as his policies seem to serve only the interests of billionaires rather than focusing on the working class. While American families are struggling with skyrocketing prices and increasingly difficult living conditions, Trump continues to implement controversial strategies. Instead of focusing on reducing high housing costs or the rising cost of living, he is drawing attention with t-shirt campaigns or promising Doge checks, all of which only lead to greater frustration. And while voters are speaking out, Trump continues to anger them by failing to condemn Russia as the aggressor in the Ukraine war. This decision makes many question whether he truly cares about the country's interests. These mounting frustrations are pushing voters from blind support to vocal criticism, and this is increasingly affecting Trump's ability to regain public trust. Many are now questioning whether Trump's policies align with the real needs of the American people, which could deeply impact his political future. The growing dissatisfaction is not just from one political party, but from people across the spectrum, which is a serious wake-up call for his leadership. It's not just the dissatisfaction of voters. Trump's economic performance is also in crisis. The prices of essential goods, such as food and energy, have soared to the point where many families can no longer afford basic necessities. A prime example is the skyrocketing price of eggs, which has made them unaffordable for many families. Yet, instead of focusing on reducing costs and helping the public, Trump has sent out strange messages, like campaigns to sell Elon Musk t-shirts or offering Doge checks. These actions not only frustrate the public, but also increase doubts about his ability to run the country. On top of that, culture under Trump's administration is in decline. Cultural events, such as performances at the Kennedy Center, have seen a significant drop in ticket sales. Meanwhile, major artists are canceling their performances, largely due to the political climate Trump has created. Worse yet, the performance of a choir made up of January 6th insurrectionists at the Kennedy Center further fuels the backlash, showing how culture has been politicized under his leadership. In addition to domestic issues, Trump's military and foreign policies are also coming under heavy criticism. One major issue is his tendency to fire experienced military leaders and replace them with less qualified individuals, which has caused confusion and concern within the military. This not only raises doubts about the military's ability to respond to emergencies, but also weakens the country's defense readiness. Moreover, Trump's failure to condemn Russia as the aggressor in the Ukraine conflict has caused disappointment among U.S. allies in Europe and undermines the country's position on the global stage. His ambiguous foreign policy statements have also fractured relationships with longtime allies, further eroding the trust placed in the U.S. on the world stage. A notable example of this is Trump's focus on Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, who is currently embroiled in a large cryptocurrency scam. Trump's decision to prioritize relationships with controversial leaders like Milei, rather than strengthening ties with traditional U.S. allies, highlights a lack of strategy in his foreign policy and risks weakening America's international credibility. In the midst of a growing global trade war, one country has taken a bold and shocking step that not only rattles the European Union, EU, but also disrupts U.S. foreign policy. That country is France, under the leadership of President Emmanuel Macron, who decided not to stay passive as the U.S. continues to impose heavy tariffs. This move not only concerns France's own interests, but also has significant implications for the entire EU. France has chosen to strike back, and this action raises important questions about the future of trade relations between Europe and the United States. Will the EU truly unite and stand against the U.S. tariff policies, or will it continue to seek compromise to avoid a full-blown trade war? With the heavy tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump, Europe could no longer stay on the sidelines. In a key meeting in Brussels, Macron delivered a strong statement, calling for Europe to unite and be prepared to respond decisively if the U.S. continued to escalate its tariff pressures. Macron stressed that Europe cannot be pushed around and must protect its interests in the face of a growing global trade war. This wasn't just a warning, it was a powerful step showing France and the EU's determination to maintain their trade and political influence in Europe. Macron's words reflected the urgency of the situation, as European leaders realized that further inaction would mean losing economic leverage on the global stage. This was a call not just for protection, but for a stronger, more unified Europe that can stand its ground against any external pressures. The move also sent a signal to the U.S. that Europe's unity is not to be underestimated in this high-stakes trade battle. While Macron's position was clear, other EU leaders took a more cautious approach. Countries like Germany and Poland believe Europe should prioritize dialogue and cooperation with the U.S. rather than getting dragged into a damaging trade war. They warn that such a conflict would harm both sides and could escalate tensions between the world's two largest economies. Germany, with its significant trade relationship with the U.S., particularly fears the long-term consequences of a trade war that could affect industrial and agricultural exports. Poland shares this view, cautioning that the EU must think strategically about the broader implications, especially as the world faces new economic challenges. However, they also acknowledge that if Trump persists with his tariffs, Europe will have no choice but to retaliate. These retaliatory measures would not only be a response to U.S. policies, but also a firm statement that Europe will not be easily dominated in this trade war. As Europe faces these crossroads, the ongoing debate among its leaders about the best approach becomes increasingly crucial. Now, here's where things get interesting. Amid increasing pressure from the U.S., France has taken a strategic step, strengthening its trade relations with China. Macron has not only maintained existing relationships, but has also signed numerous important agreements with China, covering energy, agriculture, and infrastructure. If the U.S. continues to use tariffs as a trade tool, Europe is ready to seek other partners. France's pivot toward China could undermine America's trade influence in Europe, as France embraces cooperation with China while reducing reliance on the U.S. Macron's efforts align with broader EU goals of diversifying trade relationships and reducing over-reliance on American markets. By solidifying this partnership with China, France not only strengthens its own economic position, but also strategically shifts the balance of power in Europe's favor, especially when dealing with the pressures from the U.S. This move is also a long-term investment in the future of French and European industries, positioning them in a rapidly growing market in Asia. So, how will France's shift affect global trade dynamics? What will happen to the relationship between the US and the EU as tensions rise over tariffs? While EU leaders still hope for dialogue, if Trump persists with his tariffs, Europe will not hesitate to respond. The US has used its economic might for years, but the growing power of China and the EU's solidarity could lead to new geopolitical realities. Will France continue to strengthen ties with partners like China to increase its influence? Or will the EU find a way to resolve tensions with the US through diplomacy?